it's a collaborative approach. We're a team. We come into this as this isn't adversarial, and we're going to stay in our lane and you guys stay in your lane, right? You're not going to tell us how to build it and I'm not going to tell you how to design it. But we need to come together because, hey, there's a design and you guys are looking, the goal is this, and that's not achievable. Let's get on site. Let's see what that looks like, because inevitably the end goal is that the designer is giving us that input. We're doing it as a team. There's no surprises. Nobody's walking in at the end going, well, that's not what I expected.
So welcome to episode 84 of the AFT Construction Podcast. I am your host, Brad Levitt. And in this episode, I speak with Heather Tankersley, who's the co-owner of Tankersley Construction located in Northern California. And Heather was super gracious to share a lot of her company structure. You know, she has a commercial background. She worked for a large commercial firm. Her husband did as well. Now they're in residential, and how they've taken that mentality, those processes into residential design and construction. We speak about WIP, work in progress, and the billing aspect. We talk about accounting, and of course, just that pre-construction schedule with the clients and how they're setting those expectations and how they're delivering, how many times they're doing price checks as far as budget. So a lot of valuable info just as far as that communication with the client, how to set those expectations. So without further ado, let's get started. So welcome to the AFT Construction Podcast. And today we have joining us the co-owner of Tankersley Construction, Heather Tankersley. Welcome, Heather.
Hey, Brad. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and Heather, we want to bring her on. So she has a unique background. She's worked in commercial construction and now residential. So let's start there, Heather. When you think about your commercial background, did that give you an advantage as now you are working in residential?
Oh, definitely. I think there's so many things coming from a commercial background like yourself, Brad. There's things that you bring to the table that, your guy in the truck isn't going to bring, right? You've got more knowledge, more experience, you've seen more things, and I think the client really appreciates it, right? I say if you can work in a hospital, then I can work in your house, right? I mean, I understand negative air, I understand keeping things safe and keeping things clean.
I love that you shared that, because any of us that have worked commercial, it's funny, I tell people residential is a little bit more the Wild West in a way that when you think about construction, it's a little more casual in the sense of some of the trade partners we work with and suppliers, right? Whereas commercial is a lot more formulated as far as, they're bigger companies, they have bigger insurance premiums, the company's a little bit more savvy with technology. Whereas in residential, I may have a trim guy that it's him and his son or him and his wife, and, and that's really their operation. Whereas in commercial, there could be 400 employees at the trim company. So there's a huge and a big stark difference between the two.
Oh, definitely. And, the notion of, hey, the guy in the truck is going to be a little bit different than, somebody with, an architect and an engineer and a civil engineer, and you're sitting in an owners meeting with, 17 other people, right? I mean, owners meetings now are, maybe a husband, wife, and maybe the kid that wants some input. It's a little bit different for all of us.
Yeah, and I love the analogy you stated of negative air, like working in a hospital, because anyone that's worked in the medical side, and, previously in my career, I worked in the hospital, and how formulated it is, when you have to go in and, the sanitary side and how you're prepping the space, how much, that can come into play. Now doing a remodel, right? If someone's living in their home for a remodel, you're going to be a lot more sensitive to, dust and debris and leaving the site clean and tidy at the end of each workday.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, things that we take into consideration, definitely comes from my background and Steve, my husband's background of, hey, what are we going to do that's going to set us up for success, and exposures and other things that we've done in our commercial past that we bring into residential that, our competition isn't doing.
So what was your background specifically, Heather? The company you worked for, did Steve work there as well? Were you both at the same firm, or were they both different commercial firms?
No, we were both at different commercial firms. So he worked for a larger GC here in the Sacramento area, and I worked for a electrical contractor here in Sacramento. We met, 12 years ago now. We were actually on a job site, and, the tell all of, being the project interns and, hey, you guys have a lot in common. You should go on a date, and the rest is history here. So Steve's background is in commercial construction, worked for some of the bigger general contractors in our area. And I worked for a couple of larger electrical contractors here in Northern California, and did that for 12 years. And hung up my hat 2 years ago to join on full time with Tankersley. I say I do and I don't count the first year of doing the books and the HR and everything at night while I'm trying to run, $40 million in construction work and, work for somebody else at the same time.
That's amazing. So I was going to ask what, enabled that transition, or what made you and Steve say, we're ready to start our own company. We're going to go more residential. We have the commercial background. What was that turning point, that tipping point?
For us, we actually remodeled our own kitchen when our son was a baby, and we kind of looked around and we're like, oh, we could do this. So coming from, Steve's a handy guy, and he went through college working for, some local guys in the field and kind of jack of all trades. And he's like, I can remodel our own kitchen. And we did our own, and it was definitely some learning curves, right? But there was just nobody in our area we felt comfortable that was going to do the project to the level of what we expected. And it was always Steve's dream that he wanted to go and pursue getting his contractor's license. And I was very much like, yeah, you should do that. You should do that. And we had a young family. We had our oldest son at the time. And he's like, no, I just don't know if now is a good time to start our business, but I'm going to study. So he got his license, and, things ended up shifting, and we were actually pregnant with our second, and he called me. I remember I was headed to San Francisco, kicking off a large 2-year project in the city I was going to go work on. And he goes, oh man, I got let go from my company. And I said, what? And he goes, yeah, they're doing let goes, and I got let go. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. And he goes, I'm going to do this. I already have my contractor's license. He'd been doing work for some friends on the side. And he goes, I think we can do this, start the business. And we were lucky that we had a good friend of ours that was a mentor that owns another company outside of our area, about 3 hours away. And he said, hey, I'll teach you what I know. So Steve went down there, he studied up, and we started the business. I don't know if having a brand new baby and starting a business and, having a 2-year-old was a smart thing or a crazy thing at the time, but that's how we got to where we are now. And here we are 4 years down the road, and looking back and going, wow, we did all that. This is great.
It's amazing because so many entrepreneurs are forced into entrepreneurship, right? As you mentioned with you and your husband. And, I can relate, in my background. But, as you start your company, here you are, Steve, starting Tankersley Construction. You're working, you have your full-time job. You're working at night doing, payables and accounts receivable and HR and everything else to help support the business. How did you start to build that pipeline, right? Where here you are, ground zero, although you've had construction experience, now we have to go do the hard part, business development. We have to secure work, we have to figure out our process and, deliver for the client and get trade partners and subcontractors that'll now work for me. So I'll talk about that process as far as your strategy to get that part going.
Definitely. So for us, we're in a pretty tight-knit community. So we definitely started putting some feelers out. We got really lucky in that a friend of ours just happened to, not everybody can have this story, but people, they call you and go, hey, my sister's house flooded and, she needs a whole gut done on her house. And, it's $100,000 job, first job out of the gate. And we're like, oh man, okay. So Steve takes the job, and we started networking in, our local community. We joined NARI. We ended up, really trying to build our business in our local community because we definitely saw a need there. And we really just started the ball rolling with what's the base principles that we know, right? Plans, specs, what are our finishes, and we're going to go build it. So we took very much the commercial approach of what are our design documents, right? And in residential, you don't get that, right? You get hey, can you come bid my kitchen? And you go, okay, well, what are you going to do for counters? And what are you going to do for tile? And so as we built the business, we started implementing, we got on board really early with Buildertrend, just as a, hey, let's utilize this to keep track of time and, let's make a schedule. And the client can see the schedule. Great. And we just started we saw what that platform had to offer for us. So within the first 6 months of the company, we were up on Buildertrend. We were utilizing that to keep track of all of our design documents. We had job site binders to track our construction contract changes. We're doing red lines. probably like way overkill in the beginning. So we were like coming from, these, 10 million, 40 million plus projects that we're now like, okay, Jack and Jane don't necessarily need to know all your red lines and what circuit you brought this from and those kind of things. But we took that and just built upon it to really create our process and moving into pre-construction and what does pre-construction look like and how do we go through from a client who calls us and says, hey, I have an addition I want to do, but I don't know where to start. Great, we have a process for that, right? Let's get you on board. Let's get the architect on board and we'll get the engineer and we'll get the designer and we start planning all these things down the pipeline.
I love that. I love that you went this route because that is one of the biggest issues in residential construction is we have clients, right? Whether they're living at home or they have their dream project and they want us to get started, but it does a big disservice to the client and ourselves if we don't have the design specifications and the architectural plans and the red lines and the RFIs that you mentioned, right? If we don't have all this information in an organized manner, it's going to create inefficiencies for us as a builder, right? To finish an appropriate timeline and, within budget and all these things that are key to the client. So speak about that pre-construction process because you're fighting the industry essentially of we're going to take this commercial mentality, we're going to bring in residential, and we all know that successful residential projects are due to that pre-construction process. So what does that process look like? If I were a client to call you, Heather, and say, I want you to do the remodel of my kitchen, and you're going to start asking those questions. Do you have architects involved? Do you have designers involved? Are you managing that design process?
Yeah. So if you called and hey, I don't even know where to start, right? I want to do my kitchen. So the first thing that we do is we have an initial phone call with the client, an introduction. Tell us about your project. What are your goals, right? What are you looking for? Are you a good fit? Are we a good fit for you and are you a good fit for us, right? And that's where we'll introduce the process. So, we'll lay out the next steps. So they say, great, you know what, TCI, I want to hire you. I want you to do my kitchen remodel. First thing we would do is we would have a kickoff meeting. From that meeting, we would bring in, we're not a design build company. I say we're design build or design assist. We don't do design in-house. So we don't have in-house design. I am not a designer. Everybody likes to think because we're husband-wife team, I'm, Chip and Joanna and all that stuff. No, trust me, nobody wants to see what I would put together. So we really will bring in the right fit. The client has to go through the pre-construction process in order for them to be a client of TCI. With that, we'll kind of sense what their style is. We work with a bunch of designers locally here, so we'll figure out who's going to be a good fit, introduce that designer to the client, make sure that they're a good fit together. We'll then hold a kickoff meeting, and in that kickoff meeting, we'll lay out, the client's hopes, desires, dreams. We'll talk about, initial budget of what they want to spend on a job, because I think, as you know, everybody has a budget, and that's always trying to be respectful of that. And kind of get some inspiration from the client, what they're looking for, what styles do they like, those kind of things. From there, we'll generate a floor plan. The floor plan generation will be the designer's deliverable to bring. So designer or architect, depending on scale, size of project. With that floor plan, though, say we're looking at clients like, hey, I want to remove this wall. We'll go in, we'll cut some holes in the drywall, we'll work with structural, we'll give some input so that we're not designing in a bubble, and what we're actually designing we can reasonably go build for the client's budget. So, I always joke with the clients, I'm like, well, if you're going to let us cut some holes in the sheetrock, you're committed to using us. I mean, if not, we'll come back and patch the hole, but we'll do some digging, generate the floor plan, client will review the floor plan, we'll update elevations, we'll start looking at some cabinets where things are going to lay out. From that, we do a 50% design check-in budget. So that is something that once the client gives us the okay, yeah, floor plan's good, elevations are good, we give them a budget update. The goal in that is to be able to look at, hey, this is where we're going. This is what we have allocated for allowances for our finishes. Is this still in line with what we talked about for budget? The goal with that is that we get the yay or we get the nay. So that at that point, if we need to scale back, we scale back, right? Maybe we're not going for, a crazy, full slab backsplash, or maybe we're going to switch gears and we're going to go to tile, or we're going to pivot the design to make sure we're still within budget. That gives the designer some parameters of, hey, we're going to go pick finishes. This is what we have allocated. Let's make sure we're staying within these parameters for the client. I hate getting to the end, sending a client a proposal and them just going, oh my gosh, I fell in love with this and I can't afford this, or I can't afford to pay you to go build this for me. Like now their hopes and dreams are crushed and we just look like bad guys. So as we move through all the design selections, our goal and our jobs at TCI is we're the facilitators. We're the ones, who's the next deliverable? What decisions do we need? Designer, we need these selections from you and we need these finishes, okay? Client, this is what the designer's given you. You have X amount of days or a week, whatnot. Let's keep the process moving. So once we have all those finishes selected, we will then go ahead and we'll generate the final proposal for the client. For us, we like to have everything designed, spec'd, paint color, cabinet hardware, all these things already laid out, subscopes generated. We've walked the site with our subs. We've had a site meeting. We've reviewed all the final design documents, and then we're presenting that to the client so that when we're done, they've paid us for this service to generate their full construction package. And then, say they decide, what, this is more than our budget. We need to table this. They have a deliverable. They have something that, they can come back and, hey, you know what, I'm going to go get 3 bids. Our goal is obviously that by this point we've had a relationship with a client and, they're ready to go. They're, Heather and Steve, we love your team. We can't wait to start. Let's go and do this.
I love that. That's very extensive. So when you're thinking about that overall process, from the budget checks and the selections and of course cutting into drywall to see what structural components are there and living there you're going to have to deal with, what's that time frame? Are you setting that time frame for the client in pre-construction? Is this a 3-month process, an 8-month?
Yeah, so really it depends on the scale of the job. Like, depending, are we doing a whole house? Are we doing a kitchen, right? Are we doing, an addition? It really varies. If you're saying, hey, I got a kitchen, I would say start to finish reasonably so that the client isn't overwhelmed by choices and we're managing that. I would say the quickest I could get you through that would be 8 weeks, right? Obviously scaling that appropriately given other deliverables from, structural engineer to, we got to get truss packages generated, right? If we're doing an addition or a whole house, then obviously that scale grows. But I always say it's how quickly then can the client make decisions? But the fastest that I could do that would be on a basic kitchen would be 8 weeks.
No, that's a good time frame. And so when you're doing a remodel and say it's just a kitchen, you have 8 weeks of pre-construction, and then are you strategically sequencing the build as far as, okay, we need to order cabinets, here's the 8 weeks, we decide on the cabinetry, but the cabinetry is a 12-week lead time. So we don't want to demo for 8 weeks, right? Because another 8 weeks, because in that way, hopefully the cabinetry can come in the house isn't sitting dormant. I mean, how do you factor in the actual start date with the client to set that expectation?
Yeah, so part of it, and right now is the challenge too, like everybody else, everything is crazy, right? And we're backing into holding start dates and making sure that we're ready and we can deliver that. And yeah, we're not demoing somebody's house and then, okay, we'll be back in 6 weeks, right? So for us, we really try to hone in and use a pull schedule, very much a commercial practice that we have brought and we've implemented with our team and our trade partners that we work with. So for us, we really look at, okay, cabinet guy, what's your lead time? How long, plumber, do you need to do your relocation for plumbing, right? And what do you need for infrastructure, right? Do we need to saw cut the slab? Are we pouring a new slab? Are we doing an addition? So we really utilize when our sub-trades see the job and they bid the project, we're backing in with what they need for durations to, from rough to finish, and then sequencing the job accordingly. And, we'll tell clients, hey, especially right now, hey, we're going to push your start date 2 weeks because we've ordered cabinets or windows or doors. Right now, it's so hard to tell with the climate of the industry. Hey, you know what? We don't feel like it's going to be fair to you. We're going to have this huge gap in the schedule. We're going to bring that in. We're going to move your start date to this. And we're very upfront with the client about why we do this and the sequence that we do it in, and really utilize our trade partners to make sure we're sequencing those things correctly.
So what's fascinating is you are using the pool schedule, the pool plan, which we do as well.
Yep.
Which is not super common in residential, especially commercial. It is when you're doing sequencing and, very complicated commercial builds and vertical construction. So how's that received by your subcontractor and trade partner base? Have they been a fan of it? Have they seen the value? How have you trained them? Because we've seen as we've had these meetings, it's the first time our subcontractors have ever been in one. So, how's that been received?
It's been received great. We have a really great group of trade partners that we work with. We've got, a couple plumbers, a couple electricians, you got your core group that you've honed in that, we know that can keep up with the pace of how we want to build, the quality that we build, and our scheduling. And our subs appreciate that because they know, hey, if we're going to set this date, we're going to hold to that. And it's not, okay, I'm going to have you come back and you're going to do half of this work and then you're going to do half of this. And, oh yeah, I still need you to come back to finish this here. They're not making multiple trips, and it's an efficient build for them as well as it is for us to be able to give the client a product in a timely manner. And inevitably there's always things, right? Like everyone wants their post-it note. I'm sure you're familiar with the lovely post-it note scheme of pull scheduling, right? Everyone wants their post-it note the same, and you got to duke it out for whose post-it note goes where.
I love that. I love the post-it notes, in the war room, and then you implement, those post-it notes into Build-A-Trend, which is awesome and very similar to what we're doing, which is super valuable. So going back to that, Heather, when you think about if I was a client and I'm calling you and we're going to have you do our remodel, our kitchen, our project, do you have PSA agreements, the personal service agreements, as far as we're going to do a deposit to cover your costs and time, so that way you and Steve aren't spending all this time with the client? How are you managing that expectation to cover your costs through design and pre-construction?
Yeah, we have, like I said, that initial phone call where we do a Zoom meet and greet with the client, assuming they're a good qualified lead, it's a job that, is going to be realistic budget, realistic time frame. We have our construction coordinator is the first phone call once you come in as a lead, right? And she will interview the client, make sure that, hey, yeah, this is a good job. This is going to be something that we want to do. Then they get on Steve's calendar. And from that, we have a very realistic expectation with the client. And we're upfront. We do a lot of homework on the back end of making sure that we can go build your project. And I've never had a client that's ever come back and has not seen a value in the service that we bring. We dig down into everything before we even get the trade partners out there. And they recognize the time that we put in when we have a sub-trade walk. And, there's 8, 9, 10 guys that are through, a sub-trade walk in a 4-hour window that, we're down to, hey, are we going to have enough power in your kitchen? Hey, we're going to go blow out the back half and we're going to add 1,600 square feet. And you know what? This overhead service is going to have to move. And, oh yeah, by the way, are we at grade? We're going to need a sewer ejector pump on this side over here. So the client sees what we bring to the table and just a constructability review. We've had clients that have come organically that will have nothing, and we've helped them generate construction drawings. And we've had clients who've come with full sets of drawings and said, well, why do I need to pay for this? I already have construction drawings. And that's when we'll come back and say, well, our time to review this is our time. Do you think it's reasonable for us to be paid for our time? And I've never had a client who hasn't gotten a value from that or see what we bring to the table. Because inevitably, it's something that's generated by humans that's put together. And somebody might look at something one way. And when you actually go out there, it's like, well, what about this existing condition? Did anybody talk about that? Oh, no, we totally missed that. Oh, my gosh. Now what are we going to do? So.
Yeah, it's a super tough process, trying to balance, all of that and see into the future, if you will. So that, coming back to the point you made earlier, it sounds like in that pre-construction process, you have multiple data points or realistic expectations as far as budget, so how does that transform if I were to call you today and are you given a preliminary budget, then as you, get through plans and floor plan and elevations and reflected ceiling plans and then design, you're updating that budget, so when do you give the first budget, and then how does that transform throughout the process?
So we give the first budget after floor plan generation and cabinet elevations are generated. And with that, we'll get that to the client and we'll say this, this is your first initial budget that will typically already have some of our hard costs for, lumber and framing and roof and trusses and kind of the bigger deliverable items, if you want to call it. The allowances that would still be included in that would be, down to your plumbing fixtures and your countertops and your tile and your flooring. And, and with that, we'll have a discussion with the client once we send that proposal. We'll ask to have a review meeting with them, ask them to look over it. Does this seem reasonable? We're giving you an allowance for, plumbing fixtures of X amount of dollars, right? Given that we have so many faucets, so many sinks, so many toilets, right? So we're upfront with those things so that the client then is prepared and looking at this and saying, okay, I understand. This is what the designer's going to show me something that's within my budget. And the expectation is I'm going to stay in that budget. I always joke as being part of the pre-construction process, which we ask our project managers to be a part of and help facilitate. When we get to a point where the client goes, oh my gosh, I saw this great thing and this tile's, $27 a square foot or something. It's like something crazy. I joke. I'm like, okay, that's when we're the killer of dreams, right? I'm like, this is where we have that discussion where you say, hey, I can do anything, but you're going to implode your budget, right? Let's talk about that. And maybe that's the response from the client is, oh, you know what? I love it. I'm good with it. We're going to go with it. And maybe the response is, oh no, okay, all right, thanks for keeping me in check. So it's a two-way street, and I like to just be upfront with that because I hate that awkward conversation at the end when they just get something, they're like, oh my gosh, this is hundreds of thousands of dollars more than what we have to expend, right? And then we have this discussion, well, remember, we added this and this and this and this, and they go, oh, okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, then this makes sense. I understand, right? But the goal is not to have that conversation at the end. It's these little things that are going to add up, and we keep note of that, and we keep an open dialogue about that.
I love that analogy, the killer of dreams, which unfortunately we tend to do that, right?
My clients and my kids, I swear.
Oh, it's so true. But the value by giving a preliminary budget, you're setting a data point, and although that preliminary budget is going to change, it's going to vary. I mean, look, lumber's changed, COVID has affected a lot of our material pricing, but the advantage, you have a starting point. And so from understanding what you're explaining is that, if I can put together a budget of allowances for appliances, let's say their budget's $40,000 for all their appliances, and they go and they select the appliances and they come in at $48,000. Well, it's an easy conversation to say, look, either, you keep all these appliances and we increase the budget to $48,000. So it's a known quantity, or we VE or we make some changes, right? We value engineer and then we bring that down within budget. So the client's having these consistent data checks throughout the process.
Definitely. Yeah. And just keeping that, and we're upfront about those things, right? Where it's, hey, this is where it came in at. Let's have this conversation, let's talk about it and seeing, is there something else we can VE and keeping that open dialogue. I agree.
This episode is brought to you by Sub-Zero Wolf & Cove. For over 75 years, Sub-Zero Wolf & Cove has specialized in refrigeration, cooking, and dishwashing that can be found in some of the world's most luxurious homes. At AFT Construction, we look forward to crafting our clients' dream kitchen when building the home of their dreams. To get this process started, we locate the nearest showroom and set up an appointment. It's that easy. Since Sub-Zero Wolf & Cove specializes in 3 major categories, we can make all of our kitchen selections in one stop. The first one is that Sub-Zero handles refrigeration. They are the preservation specialist. Key features included fresher, longer dual refrigeration, advanced air purification, precise temperature control, customized modular design. This ensures tastier, healthier food and eliminates waste so that the food stays fresher longer. Second is that Wolf is the cooking specialist. Key features include precise heat control, predictable, consistent temperature, intuitive controls, and easy-to-use technology. Everything is designed with you in mind. These features enhance flavors of food, ensure consistency, and eliminates guesswork. Delicious results every time. And last but not least is Cove, the cleaning specialist. Key features include precise water flow, superior drying conditions, fully adjustable interior for every need, and so quiet it never interrupts. Not only are all products functional and reliable, they look great, truly built to last. To schedule an appointment at your nearest Sub-Zero Wolf & Cove showroom, visit subzero-wolf.com/showroom or click the link in our show notes below. Now, we're super excited to welcome one of our new sponsors to the podcast, Pella Windows. And this is even more exciting because we use Pella in so many of our projects, nearly all of them. And they've been just an incredible partner of ours. And locally, Sammy and Adam, they are not only amazing business partners behind us, but they are super close friends. And I speak on the podcast all the time about the importance of relationships, right? Relationships with our customers, with our vendors, with our suppliers, because at the end of the day, I'm only as good as those that help our brand and assist us in our projects to take it from the ground up all the way to completion. And if we didn't have partners such as Pella, there's no way we'd be who we are today. Over the years, we've built this amazing relationship. When we call them or email them, they respond. They're quick. Their company culture, their integrity, their honesty, they are always there to do what's right for us and the customer. They can do anything from small replacement projects to large custom homes and even multi-million-dollar commercial projects. And also, when you think about their product line, they can do ultra contemporary, historical preservation, and large traditional projects. So for anyone, any scale, any size, they're the ones to call. They're here local. They have an amazing Instagram. Make sure and give them a follow to see what they're doing. So if you need windows and doors, give Sammy and Adam a call. We stand behind Pella. We love what they do, their culture, their brand, and especially their quality. And if you want to learn more about Pella Windows, check our show notes. We'll have everything tagged there so you can give them a follow and have their contact information to reach out. And now let's get back into the episode. So how often do your clients use the owner portal? I mean, you're setting that up in Build-A-Trend. Are they pretty savvy, most of your clients? Are they accessing that? Are they relying on you? I know remodels a little bit more in depth as far as clients are visiting there or living there. And so they're pretty, in tune of what's happening.
Yeah, I would say, our clients are very versed in it. I don't want to say strong arm them into it, but we definitely make them, access it. We talk about that at the first meeting. Hey, are you on Build-A-Trend? Do you need help logging in? Let's get you in there, right? Because for us, we make the client go through, we put, the designer will present, maybe your finishes with your countertops and your sinks, and you'll go pick your faucets. Everything goes through, and we do an approval of those through Build-A-Trend. So you got to do the selections. You have to approve the fixtures. You got to approve the sconces, all the things that are in there, all the finish schedules. We require that the client sign off on those through Build-A-Trend. It's a cost check for the client, right? This is what the designer presented you. You're agreeing. That's what we're using as our check to make sure that the client sees that. We got the nice pretty picture and the link to the item and all those kind of things. And it's also good for us because that's how we track all of our ordering, right? We order straight from that. Our vendors are in it. Our vendors know, hey, things get approved. They price it in there. We release it to them. That's how we track all of our shipments, when items come in, when they get to our warehouse, when they get to the site. And we make the client really utilize that. We have some clients that are doing, remodels and they're not living there. So they like that. We have a client that's doing a new build and they're 3 hours away. And so I joke with them. It's like, the only time they see their site is on the daily logs. So they really, really, really like that aspect of it. So I haven't really had any client that has not wanted to be a part of that. And really for us, they value being able to have this resource and this glimpse as to what's going on in their project and where things are going and where everything's going to be done.
I love that. And you mentioned earlier you work with many different designers. So what do designers have to do to work with Tankersley Construction? What is the value they bring, or how, is that relationship enhanced, through the talent of the designer, their communication process? What is the pros of the designers and why you work with them?
Yeah, so for us, given our commercial background, we're both really used to working with an architect, right? And having, elevations set and having heights for cabinetry or framing and just, looking at a commercial set of plans is our background. So for us, on a basic kitchen remodel, are you going to have an architect? No, right? I mean, yeah, you're going to get drawings from an architect for a build, but you might not get all the finishes and you might not get down to all the countertop pieces. And, there might not be as much detail from a set of house plans depending on the architect. So for us, we like to, we've really built a network in our area, just kind of talking to some of the designers here and how they like to sequence their work, what they can do, what's a pain point for them, and what's a pain point for us. So for us, if you want to come work with us, and designers love this, is that we're like, hey, let's get everything picked, right? Let's do it all right now, right? They're like, yeah, that's great, because their portion of the project, probably 90% of it, minus some construction input of existing conditions or something that maybe in the field isn't constructible, they're done. They're like, great, awesome, I can keep moving, right? I got my package done. But they also like the aspect that we bring from, it's a collaborative approach. We're a team. We come into this as this is an adversarial, and we're going to stay in our lane and you guys stay in your lane, right? You're not going to tell us how to build it and I'm not going to tell you how to design it. But well, we need to come together because, hey, there's a design and you guys are looking, the goal is this, and that's not achievable. Let's get on site. Let's see what that looks like. How do we lay that out? How do we get this tile wrapped hood to look correctly with these cabinets? And how are we going to make this look nice? And how are we going to lay out these, there's some framing issues that we've had, and now this set of windows is going to look slightly different, and we need to make sure the casing is still going to fit. So all these things that we as builders, we don't want to make the call on, because inevitably the end goal is that the designer is giving us that input, and we're doing it as a team, and there's no surprises. Nobody's walking in at the end going, well, that's not what I expected.
Yeah. Well, it's difficult because you have the expectation of you as the builder of what things will look like. The designer has their understanding, the client has theirs. How do you, document the process in the field to make sure the trade partners are executing the appropriate design, the correct design, to finalize the actual vision of everyone involved?
Oh, totally. Right. I mean, that's a challenge always. We have a set of plans on site. We have job site binders that have every, spec sheet, cut sheet, design board in it. And I mean, we're back to red line, on a binder, and then it also lives in Builder Trend. So we have a set of as-built, drawings that live in Builder Trend that they can access as well, that they can see. And so, a lot of it is a lot of documentation, a lot of conversations, right? Hey, let's lay this out. Let's mark this up. Make sure everybody's clear, getting everybody on board. So, I mean, that's always a challenge, always.
Oh, it is. And, when you think about just the implementation, we put, most of our documentation as well online, whether it be Dropbox or Builder Trim. Are your trade partners savvy? Not say they're not savvy, but do they use it, or are they more prone to look at the job site binders and how you're managing things in the field?
Yeah, I think most, we lean on them really hard to utilize Builder Trend. I think a lot of them, for the most part, are like, hey, I like this piece of paper on site. It makes me feel good, right? And so inevitably, our responsibility as our project managers will say, we'll come out, we'll have the iPad up, we're scrolling through, we're making sure, what's on site matches what's on our as-built, and that we're not missing anything that's within that. But, those finished schedules getting updated, elevation drawings getting updated, right? Any existing conditions, right? Hey, what did we set the elevation at for this vanity, given that, we got the subfloor and we got the tile thickness, and how did we get to that decision, right?
So who's setting up the job site binders and what do they entail?
So our construction coordinator is responsible for that with the PM's review. Everything in our job site binders include a copy of our base contract. So if there's any questions for, our self-perform workers, that, they can look back and see what's TCI scope that we're self-performing. It includes all of the spec sheets and cut sheets for all of, like I mentioned, plumbing fixtures, light fixtures, set of drawings, design documents, specs on windows, doors, trim details, baseboard styles. I mean, inevitably, it's everything that you should need in order to go build the project that we have.
I love that. And then how does that work as far as your management process? You mentioned you have a coordinator, you have a project manager. I mean, whose role is what part of pre-construction and what part of the build, and how do you manage that handoff?
Yeah, so the project manager and Steve, who handles all of our estimating and the pre-construction side, they're responsible for making sure that we get through pre-construction. The PM inevitably, as we would like to be involved, day one, obviously depending how many jobs that project manager has in active construction, that project manager will plug in as soon as available. The goal is that they're already familiar with the client and the project. By drop dead is like subtrade walk, right? Because you got to be out there walking it with the subtrades to make sure when it comes time to go build, you're familiar with what we talked about and what's going on and the goal of the project. The construction coordinator manages all of the material procurements, making sure we have all the finished selections are in Builder Trend, the client has signed them off, all that documentation is handed off to the project manager. They're the final review. The project manager is responsible with making sure the on-site binder is up to date, the job file is up to date. They can lean on the construction coordinator for any details or items that might need to be updated or hunted down, or, hey, where are we mounting this door hardware, on this cabinet profile? Like, have we talked about that? So, they'll really like to utilize the construction coordinator to do that. But for the most part, it's the responsibility of our project managers.
Well, and I know it varies with scope, how big the project is, the complexity, as far as the field management, is there a superintendent or is there a project manager? Are they running one project, 2, 3?
Yeah, so we have a production manager. So the production manager in our company, he oversees our carpenters in the field, as well as oversees the project managers. His responsibility is making sure that, constructability, no constructability concerns, quality product, safety environment. It's his responsibility to, visit all the sites and keep up with what we're sub-performing, as well as QC subcontractor work. The project manager is also responsible for going to the job site, 3-4 times a week, checking in, meeting the sub trade on his first day out on site to make sure that they're clear on, maybe a change that took place or some added scope, or, hey, we got to look at this condition that's over here because of whatnot, right? So between the two, the project manager and our production manager, they're both on a responsibility for the oversight of the job. The project manager handles more of the execution of purchase orders and, approving their invoices and the budget and the dollars.
So how do you manage that when there's change orders? When a client comes in and, you're working through construction, they say, Heather or Tankersley, TCI, we're going to make these changes. Are you trying to price on the spot, or are you having to sign a pre-construction, not pre-construction, but as far as like a change order document to say, we're going to do this change, it's approved? I mean, how do you manage that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, our expectation with the client and, our discussion is, we'll talk about what the goal is, right? What's the change? Hey, we'll get you a price. Our expectation from our project managers and how we run our work is that we price it, approve it, and then go do it, right? Let's go do it, and then, it's going to cost us X or whatnot. I mean, anything that's a scope change, we send as a change order, right? Whether it has cost associated with it or not. But coming from that commercial background and just knowing you have to document what work you put in place, like what happens if there's a water leak and you didn't even touch that wall, but now you're getting sued. Like, how do you document that, right? I mean, it might not cost you anything, but just to type it up and send it in as, hey, it's a $0 change. We took care of that for you, client, because, it wasn't that big a deal. And our guy was there and, we're going to do you a solid, right? You need to make sure that you have that accounted for. And then the things that you do end up charging for as well that maybe are outside of scope or the client wants changed, we document that.
Well, I love that you're documenting that. It's so valuable for the client, that organization. And, it's funny, you talked about, the production managers making sure the site is safe. And, going back to the commercial mentality, you go on a commercial job site, you have to have your safety glasses and boots and pants and, your vest. I mean, all this stuff, whereas residential, they're showing up in shorts and t-shirts. So it's a little bit different process. But, one of the most important parts of our business is the accounting side, WIP. The work in progress, which is a huge challenge that most contractors struggle with. So how do you manage the WIP? How do you manage that to understand, okay, we had a contract, we had a value here. Are we on target? Are we going to be profitable? How are you managing the WIP process of each project?
I'm in charge of all the operations and accounting side. The budgets that are initiated and generated at the start of the project, I will review those with the project manager. It's the project manager's job to generate the budget for their job from the estimates. We'll review that and we'll set the baseline budget. Then monthly, it's a process I actually implemented from a previous employer. We'll do a cost to complete or a WIP review. So monthly, I sit down with the project managers. The expectation is their jobs that they're running. We sit down, we look at the budget, and they come with what's left for, we call it a CTC or a cost to complete. So the expectation is they're coming and they're giving me a breakdown of what we have left to perform for self-performed labor, what do we have left to buy for materials, sub-cost, equipment, and any incidental costs that we might foresee. So that we're then going through and we're reviewing, hey, what did we say this job was going to start at? And what was our baseline budget? What are we expecting to make? And what are we going to project? And then from that, I will then use that to implement our WIP and our work in progress and tracking where we're at with job profit and expenses, and making sure that we're generating and doing that on a monthly basis.
Which is super valuable. And I think most companies don't do this enough. I know in the beginning of our firm, we did not do it enough. As we do now, we're a lot more, I would say, precise as far as managing that, because in the beginning you set maybe an indicated outcome, right? You have, when you break ground, you kind of have an idea, okay, it's going to cost this much supervision and labor of my coordinator, my superintendent, my project manager. So we have that indicated outcome, and then we track that through WIP throughout the process to say, especially when we're looking back in our database, because we have some projects where I need to do a better job vetting the clients because they're consuming all the time of each of my coordinators and superintendents, and whereas some other projects are moving, seamlessly.
Definitely. Job costing is so important. I mean, if you're not already set up to job costs, you got a job cost, because how are you going to be able to have that historical data to look at that and go, oh yeah, I'm going to go bid this job, and it's just like that job I already did. Well, how do you know if that was a good job for you? Like, did you make money on that job? Who knows? If you're not job costing and tracking that, knowing, hey, this is where we started and this is where we finished, are we even close? Like, there's just no way you're taking a shot in the dark. Or that evaluation when you're maybe 20% into the project, your first, month or two in, hey, where are we at on the job? Like, are we going to make money on this? Who knows? But we need to make sure we're clear on that. So going forward, we're not just doing favors, right? Death by 1,000 cuts. Maybe, we'll just take care of that little thing. We'll take care of that. And then all of a sudden your margins completely slipped. How do you know that? You got to track the costs.
I love that you shared that, Heather, because that is the biggest thing. Is so many times we've done a project, we have that on a resume, and then we're like, yeah, this one is in line. We've done that. Let's move forward. But was that project profitable? Were we successful in the job costing? And as you mentioned, the death by 1,000 cuts, all these little ads that we do, are we doing these as, an incentive for the client, for us, for their relationship? Are we charging them? And, it's really important because, when you look back in your database, it's really easy to say, okay, my lumber changed. Well, that's understanding based on the current climate, but on some of the hard costs like appliances, how is this changing? How is this evolving? What are we budgeting in the future? So, from a job costing, how often do you audit the end of the project with the production manager and the project manager to say, okay, we had our indicated outcome, we did our WIP, how has that changed over time? Where are we at now?
We do it at the end of every project. So at the end of every project, we will review that with the project manager. We do monthly team meetings as well. And so typically for us, by the time we get to a monthly meeting, we've had a couple jobs that have closed. And so we'll do it on a granular level with the budget, with the PM and the production manager. And then we'll do it from a more higher level with the field team, right? So we'll come in, we like to call it plus delta. So it's not a negative, right? It's what will we change? And so the question then is, hey, what do you think, team, that we did good, and what could we improve upon next time, right? Maybe it's, hey, you know what, that layout, when we had a rough inspection and we all came in and we did a QC and we caught XYZ, like that worked out great. Let's do that on the next job. That's where a lot of our policies and procedures and cross checks that we've done have come into play, because we're talking about that as a team. We're not building in a bubble, right?
And absolutely. I wish we were building a bubble. It'd make things a little bit easier. In construction's,
Yes.
a tough industry. So do your clients prefer lump sum? Are you cost plus? How does that vary for each of the contracts?
We're lump sum all the way. Cost plus, hats off to you if you do cost plus. I don't know. It's like time and material. I mean, I did it back in my day, and you never can capture all the time. I swear. It's inevitable. No, give me the lump sum all day.
Now, that's interesting because especially if you're dabbling in the remodel world, it can be very difficult doing a lump sum because there's so many unknowns, even as much as you try to prepare. So how do you manage that process if there are unknowns, or you open a wall and there's something you didn't factor? Is there opportunity with the client to cover some of those costs that you find out about?
Oh, definitely. I mean, that goes back to that, just being open, being honest, and setting those expectations. Hey, this is what we anticipate. This is what we think is here. But, again, we don't have x-ray vision. I can't foresee if your subfloor is going to be adequate to lay your new flooring on, right? I mean, that's something inevitably I can't see. And just being upfront, as soon as there's anything that we see that's like that, our sub-trade partners know, and, our guys in the field know. If there's something, we open a wall and it's like, oh man, there's a vent pipe running through here, we can't put that there, then that's, that's instantly, that's a phone call to the PM, and the production manager. What do we have going on here? Let's get a game plan. What's it going to cost to move that or to fix that, or do we have to regroup, and getting a game plan, and then just going to the client up front once we discover that and said, hey, we ran into this. This is what we found, and this is our solution, or this is what we're going to have to do. And then that's when we have that discussion of, it's going to cost XYZ, or, hey, we can mitigate that and it's actually not going to be a problem. And then that's where that, $0 change order of, hey, you know what? The plumber said he could take care of it. He's got to move that vent line anyway. I'll document it. So then, in the end too, when they come back and go, oh my God, we spent how much money or whatnot, there's always those little things that you look back and go, yeah, but remember we took care of that for you, and we took care of that. And, inevitably it's goodwill.
I love that you do the goodwill, the $0 change orders. And that's something we have implemented as well that we do, to say, there may be things that we cover that aren't a big cost, but we want to make the client aware so that there is that emotional bank account we're feeling, right, come the end of the project.
100%, right? It just adds you some goodwill when there's something down the road that, hey, maybe, this is remodeling, this is construction. Maybe there is something that goes wrong and it's like, oh man, like we screwed up on that one, right? And maybe that blow comes a little less, harsh to them.
Oh, there will definitely be some things that go wrong in our business. I mean, they always do on every project. Even as much 100%. As much as we try to be precise, it does happen.
I know. Nobody shows that on Instagram. Come on.
No one wants to show, all the blisters of the construction world. But, so do you ever get pushback from the clients on a remodel in your market that it's not cost plus, whereas some markets, are more dictated to a cost plus market?
No, we haven't had any pushback on that. More so than anything, our clients, I think, are better. Most of our clients, we do a good job of educating and really kind of looking at them from a realistic aspect. If we need to send, if we send a lump sum and they said, hey, we want to see what this breakdown is for, what's it going to cost me for counters? Okay, I'll tell you what it's going to cost you for counters. I don't want to get into, let's go through and nitpick every single piece, because that's not successful for anybody. It doesn't get us to our end goal. And it's just having that expectation of, what do you try? What's your goal? What's your goal in finding that, or discovering that, and really kind of putting it back to the client of how is that going to help you with your decision to move forward?
I love that. And then as far as deposits and billing goes, are you billing once a month? Typical AIA doc. Are you asking for deposits or material deposits so you're not fronting or front loading, the project yourself?
So we actually bill weekly, which everybody's like, oh my gosh, you bill weekly? Holy cow, that's a lot of work.
I actually love that. I love that, by the way.
Do you? It's so funny because I've talked to other people and they're like, oh my gosh, it's so much work. But yeah, I mean, to that point, and we do progress billing, we do it by, 16 division trade, demo, flooring, plumbing. We use that as the base parameters, and then we bill against what we're at for percentage complete. What we like about it is, one, we're not out a lot of upfront cost. If we ordered windows that week, we bill for windows, right? And we have that discussion with the client. Yes, there are no windows installed yet. Yes, we are 6 months from putting in your windows, right? Hopefully not that long. But yes, we had to buy, but we got to order them, right? Especially right now. So we'll have those discussions. I think it also gets some stake in the game for the client, right? They're paying for the materials up front. We're not out the cost, but we're also not progress billing things that work we haven't put in place. So there's less risk on our say should something happen and we have to pull off. There's not money that we're holding, that's the clients. And then there's not money that we're waiting to get from the clients from work that we put in place. We are very upfront with our clients. We bill on Thursday. The expectation is we're paid Friday. Have I ever, and if we don't show up Monday, that's what our contract says. Have I ever had to tell somebody no? Have I had to give them a slight nudge by the time it's next Thursday? Of course. But, we haven't had any issues with clients not being respectful of that.
I love that. I mean, when you think about the remodel world, it's such a more difficult process to manage. Things are moving quickly. You're installing quickly. On a large custom home, it's economies of scale, right? It's a bigger, the framers are going to maybe take 3 months on a custom home, whereas they may be in there 3 days on a remodel. And so, to advance and do once a month is tough. There was a remodel contractor that I, here in town that I network with, and he's similar to you in the sense, but his formula is a little different. What he does, he says, let's say it's $100,000 remodel and it's going to take me 10 weeks just for easy math here. What he does is he said there's 10 payments of 10 grand. And he bills every Friday. And so every Friday they wire the 10 grand. And then, if they don't wire it, then he has a clause in his contract that, he won't show up Monday as you mentioned. And then he also has a clause that if there's like 3 consecutive days that no one's on site, they don't have to pay that week, or, which is a little more general because, it's a little tough to manage 10 even payments. Whereas, construction, as you mentioned, WIP and job costing, it varies. You can't just do a flat fee, but your process is good, billing every week, because then it keeps you protected on these projects that are very quick moving.
Yeah, definitely. And, we have clients that, same, where we've got, a whole house edition that, the framers are there for 3 weeks, and maybe the billing is that week is, much smaller because it's spread out over that longer period of time based off of, the labor to go frame, because we've already paid for all the lumber materials. But it gives us a little bit more insulation and, again, expectations to the client, right? And the client sees that we're there and sees that we're working.
Well, this has been amazing. I mean, Heather, you have such a refined process. It's great to hear another contractor with that commercial mentality, bringing in a residential and some of the processes you put in place. So what's upcoming and exciting for TCI?
Oh, man. Well, right now our pre-com board is crazy. I think like everybody else, we're so excited for just this backlog of really good, exciting projects that are coming up. We got a cool ground build that's coming up next year with an architect that we're excited to work with and a new designer that we're working with. So we're really excited for that new build. I'm actually gonna be posting some stories about that here coming up on social media in the next few weeks. So now that I kind of got the go ahead to post some things, but
awesome.
We're a young company. We like to have a lot of fun. We've got a good team, a good group. We like to have fun, but we like what we do, and I think that really kind of resonates with the team that we have in our office.
Well, where can our listeners find you?
They can find us on our website at tankersleybuilds.com, or at our Instagram, which is Tankersley_construction. And we feature a lot of our construction projects on there, a lot of our kind of office banter and humor. We try to keep it real with what's going on. But, we also like to focus on a lot of cool projects and cool things to get to do.
Well, we're excited to follow along. Heather, thank you again for making time.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it.
So thank you all for tuning into the podcast today. And just as a recap, if you check the show notes, they're just going to have all the links for the topics that we discuss. And also one of our favorite features now is the chapters that go through the conversation. So if there's certain topics you want to revisit or listen to, they're outlined by the time that we discuss those. And again, we can't thank you enough for all of your support. Please make sure and download our podcast, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review wherever you download your podcast.